Good morning, everyone. In the previous session, we have discussed about the scope and relevance of the bioproduction of vitamin B12, and we were discussing about the demand and scale up process along with biosynthetic pathways of vitamin B12. So, in today's session, let us continue to discuss more about the bioproduction of vitamin B12, and later we will discuss about the production of another important product, that is streptomycin. In the previous session, we have understood that large scale production or industrial scale production of vitamin B12 occurs via microbial fermentation following two pathways. Number one, the aerobic, or more precisely an oxygen dependent pathway, which is utilized by Pseudomonas denitrificans, and number two, the anaerobic or the oxygen independent pathway, which is utilized by Propionibacterium species. So we will try to understand in detail about the fermentative production of vitamin B12 using Pseudomonas denitrificans and Propionibacterium species. To begin with, we'll try to understand the fermentative production of vitamin B12 by Propionibacterium species. The Propionibacterium species has the highest potential to accumulate vitamin B12 intracellularly. So this is what we have to remember. But they excrete the byproducts, mainly the propionic acid and the acetic acid, into the extracellular medium. Right. So the Propionibacterium species has the highest potential to accumulate vitamin B12 intracellularly, and they excrete the byproducts. Propionibacteria species secreted byproducts, that is mainly the propionic acid and the acetic acid, into the extracellular medium. Now the Propionibacterium strains employed for vitamin B12 production, they are microaerophilic and they produce vitamin B12 in high yields only under very low oxygen concentrations. We have seen that Propionibacterium species are following anaerobic pathway, but in true sense they are microaerophilic and they produce vitamin B12 in high yields only under very low oxygen concentrations. Now the bioprocess of vitamin B12 production by these Propionibacterium species, it is divided into two stages. What happens in these two stages? To begin with, in the first 3 days of the fermentation, the bacteria are grown anaerobically so as to produce the precursor, that is cobamide. It is a vitamin B12 precursor, and then there will be lack of an important moiety, that is dimethyl benzimidazole, abbreviated as DMBI. Right. What happens in the next stage? Subsequently, vitamin B12 formation is completed by gentle aeration. So you are producing air over here for about 1 to 3 days, allowing the bacteria to undertake the oxygen dependent synthesis of the DMBI, and then it is linked to the precursor cobamide. Right. Essentially, it is microaerophilic and it involves both oxygen dependent and oxygen independent pathway. But we say that Propionibacterium species follows anaerobic pathway or oxygen independent pathway for the reason that in the initial stages, that is in the first 3 days of fermentation, the bacteria are grown anaerobically so as to produce the precursor of vitamin B12, cobamide. But there will not be an important moiety, that is DMBI. So this happens in the second stage. Vitamin B12 production is completed by gentle aeration. Now the oxygen dependent pathway begins for about 1 to 3 days, allowing the bacteria to undertake the oxygen dependent pathway or the synthesis of the DMBI, and then it is linked to the precursor, that is cobamide. Right. Now what happens with respect to Pseudomonas denitrificans? This follows aerobic pathway, that is oxygen dependent pathway. Pseudomonas denitrificans growth parallels with the cobalamin synthesis under aerobic condition. Right. So if you see more growth of the organism, that is Pseudomonas denitrificans, it is commensurate with the cobalamin synthesis under aerobic conditions, provided the culture is directly supplemented with DMBI and cobalt salts. Right. Maintaining the low dissolved oxygen has a favorable effect. And several vitamin B12 derivatives can be produced either by direct fermentation or by chemical conversion of the cyanocobalamin. Now the culture is aerated during the whole fermentation process, and it takes about 2 to 3 days at a temperature of 30 degrees centigrade, and pH values are usually maintained at 6 to 7. So these are the two important pathways which are undertaken by two important organisms for the bioproduction of vitamin B12. There is another class of organisms, that is methanogens. Some of the recent literature do mention about methanogens in the production of vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 production by methanogens may have few advantages over conventional vitamin B12 producers, that is Pseudomonas denitrificans or Propionibacterium species. So these methanogens may offer few advantages over conventional vitamin B12 producers. So these are some of the recent literature where we find the mention about methanogens. So the concentration of vitamin B12 in the fermentation broth is usually 10 times more than what the conventional vitamin B12 microorganisms do. Right. So the main product, that is methane, in case of methanogens, it does not inhibit growth of the methanogens, so that high cell density could be achieved. High cell density means higher yield of the vitamin B12. So the methanol, CO2 and acetic acid used as substrates are inexpensive in this case, relatively stable, and they are renewable. So all these factors add to the industrial production of vitamin B12. Right. But there is one important limitation. Long residence time are required for the substrate because methanogens grow more slowly than the conventional vitamin B12 producing organisms. So what happens? The consequence of this is it makes the fermentation facility larger. Since they grow more slowly, that is most important limitation, makes the fermentation facility larger. So that is the reason not much of industries have been using methanogens for vitamin B12 production. Still it is the use of the conventional producers, that is Pseudomonas denitrificans and Propionibacterium species for bioproduction of vitamin B12. Now if you just look at the recovery of vitamin B12, there is a flow chart to understand the recovery process. The steps in the downstream process for the recovery of vitamin B12, it is summarized in this flow chart. What happens is the biomass is separated by centrifugation to obtain a good cell mass concentrate, which is then dried. Then alternatively, the entire contents of the fermenter can be concentrated or spray dried. And then the cell lysis is done by heating the centrifuged cell mass in an aqueous solution or by other methods to get the corinoids. Then the corinoids are converted to vitamin B12 or cyanocobalamin by the addition of potassium cyanide. So this happens usually in the process in the presence of sodium nitrite and heat. And later the vitamin solution is clarified subsequently by filtration and then treatment with zinc chloride, and then it is precipitated out by the addition of tannic acid or cresol to give a product of approximately 80% purity. Now this is suitable for use as animal food additive, because we have seen that most of the vitamin B12 produced goes for animal feed. So this 80% purity is more likely suitable for use as animal food additive. If you require further greater purity, that means for greater purity which is required in case of pharmaceutical applications or use, the clarified solution is extracted with organic solvents such as CCl4, that is carbon tetrachloride, and then with water and butanol, followed by the organic solvents. Right. So in addition, adsorption processes such as ion exchangers, aluminum oxide or activated carbon can be used for recovery of the vitamin B12. And now the pure vitamin B12 can be obtained by crystallization after the addition of organic solvents such as phenol and water. So finally you will get the crystal form of the vitamin B12. Right. So with this understanding, we have completed the three important products so far, and now we will move on to another important product, that is the antibiotic streptomycin. Natural products, they have diverse biological activities which are relevant to the human health, including antibiotics, antifungal, anti-cancer, immunosuppressive, anti-inflammatory, and so on and so forth. So these natural products, they are rich source of antibiotic drug development. But what happens is the most clinically useful of these products can be classified as polyketides, non-ribosomal peptides, and aminoglycosides. So we are more concentrating on the bioproduction of streptomycin. And these antibiotics, they have a molecular weight of about 3000 Daltons, produced by different organisms. It could be from bacteria, fungi, algae, lichens, green plants. So all these can be used as microorganisms for production of antibiotics via fermentation. And there are 5 basic mechanisms of antibiotic action against bacterial cells from microbiology point of view. That is, number 1, inhibition of the nucleic acid synthesis. It could be at the level of inhibition of protein synthesis or inhibition of cell wall synthesis or alteration of cell membranes and anti-metabolite activity. So this is the prelude for the bioproduction of streptomycin. Now streptomycin, it is an antibiotic produced by the bacteria, that is Streptomyces graecosus, and this antibiotic is found to be active against gram-negative bacteria and also against the Mycobacterium tuberculosis inducing bacteria. It is proved to be useful in the treatment of infections caused by gram-positive, specially resistant to another antibiotic, that is penicillin, and it is also useful in the control of plant diseases caused by bacteria, since it is shown to act systematically in plants too. Right. Now we'll try to understand how the streptomycin is produced via fermentation, that is using submerged culture method in industries. To begin with, it is the production of inoculum. We'll go step by step. The spores of the Streptomyces graeceus, it is maintained as the soil stocks, or it is lyophilized in a carrier, could be a sterile skimmed milk, and then the spores from the stock cultures are then transferred to sporulation medium. So you have the spores of these bacteria. It could be lyophilized in a carrier medium, that is skimmed milk, or maybe they are maintained as soil stocks, and then the spores from the stock cultures are transferred to the sporulation medium to provide enough sporulated growth to initiate liquid culture, build up so that mycelium inoculum in flask or inoculum tanks, and then after sufficient mycelial growth, it is fed to the production fermenter. Now, what is the status of the medium? A production medium contains carbon source and nitrogen source. Glucose is supposed to be one of the best carbon source, and we find the use of phenyl acetic acid and L-naphthalene acetic acid, so that these molecules are added as they are known to be growth stimulating compounds. And it is also better to add the proline into the medium, which helps in higher production of the antibiotic streptomycin. Now, what is the process of fermentation? The sterilized liquid medium is fed into the fermenter, and then the inoculum of appropriate volume, usually 1:10 or 1:20 ratio, it is introduced into the fermenter. The optimal fermentation temperature is in the range of 25 to 30 degrees centigrade, and optimal pH range is in between 7 to 8. And then the fermentation is highly aerobic, which lasts for about 5 to 7 days, and it passes through 3 phases. Now, this is most important. What happens in phase 1? In phase 1, it takes about 24 hours to 48 hours, and rapid growth of the mycelium occurs, and the pH, there is a rise in pH to 8 due to the release of ammonia into the medium and due to the proteolytic activity of the Streptomyces graeceus. Now, glucose is utilized in the phase 1, and very little production of streptomycin occurs. Now, what happens in phase 2, that is second phase? It lasts for 2 days. The streptomycin production occurs at a rapid rate with increase in the mycelial growth, and ammonia released in the first phase is utilized in the second phase, so that now the pH which had gone to about 8, now you will see the decrease in the pH, and glucose and oxygen are required in large quantity in phase 2. Now, what is happening in phase 3? Here the cells undergo lysis, releases ammonia, and pH increases, which falls again after a period of continuous streptomycin production. Now, the oxygen requirement decreases, and the contents of the medium, including the sugar, get exhausted. Finally, the streptomycin production stops, and usually the yield will be about 1200 micrograms per ml is obtained. Right. Now, these are the 3 important phases of the fermentation, and moving on to the harvest and recovery. So, after the completion of the fermentation of the mycelium after entire completion of the after completion of the fermentation. The mycelium is separated from the broth through filtration, and streptomycin is recovered by several methods. So generally employed method is the fermentation broth is in the from the fermentation broth is acidified, filtered and neutralized. Then it is passed through column containing cation exchange resins to absorb the streptomycin from the broth. The column is then washed with water, and then the antibiotic is eluted with HCl or maybe with the cyclohexanol or phosphoric acid. Then it is concentrated under vacuum at 60 degree centigrade. Right. The streptomycin is then dissolved in methanol and then filtered, and acetone is added to the filtrate to precipitate the streptomycin. The precipitate is again washed with acetone and vacuum dried. It is purified further by dissolving in methanol, and the streptomycin in the purest form is extracted as calcium chloride complex. So this is about the recovery process of the antibiotic streptomycin. So I hope I have covered the most important concepts of the bioproduction of four important products that were there in mentioned in your syllabus. So I'll stop my discussion over here for today. We can continue with newer concepts in the next session. Thank you very much.